Namaste and a warm welcome, everyone. It takes great pleasure to share this platform of the Golden Door Awards 2021 with all of you. Our today's panel discussion is titled Tyranny of Taboos: How Extremism on Menstrual Taboos and Stigmas Are Affecting the World. The panel draws its inspiration from my award winning essay, The Pouch of Creation and Its Disuniting Beliefs, at the Golden Door Awards 2020, and it is also chosen as a chapter in the Golden Truths book series. This discussion hopes to initiate a call to action which can bring the much needed shift from dogmatic, regressive thinking to progressive, inclusive living across the globe. With great respect and love, I would like to introduce to you my esteemed panelists who are here today, sparing their valuable time to throw light and insights onto this discussion. My first panelist is dear friend Elsa Marie De Silva, the founder of Red Dot Foundation India and the president of Red Dot Foundation Global USA. She is a 2020 IWF Fellow and a Gratitude Network Fellow and an alumni of the Stanford Draper Hills Summer School, the US State Department's Fortune Mentoring Program, and many more. Next, we have with us is Kanta Singh, the country program manager for UN Women India. She has over 25 years' experience in the management of pro women development programs. She has worked with national and international organizations to promote women in formal economy, sports, and politics. A Chevening Gurukul Fellow from the University of Oxford. We then have dear Mandy Sangera, a friend from UK, an award-winning philanthropist, consultant, and global campaigner, often referred to as a global catalyst, an international human rights activist, motivational TEDx speaker, and advisor to UNESCO in partnership with the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. Then we have with us Najat Muhammad, the country director for Global One, Kenya, overseeing the achievement of its vision and mission in the Horn of Africa. Over 15 years of experience in development and humanitarian sectors in both Ethiopia and Kenya, she brings with her an enormous passion for gender equality, women empowerment, and community development. Then we have our scientific and medical angle joining us for this panel, Major Dr. Meeta Singh, a doctor, soldier, and humanitarian who works for the equality, empowerment, and dignity of humanity, especially for the marginalized and disadvantaged sections of society. She has served as the chairperson of Dignity of Girl Child Foundation since 2011, honored with the Outstanding Women Award by NCW Government of India. And our last panelist, the solo man with all the wonderful women in the house, is Jerome Elam from US, the president and CEO of Trafficking in America Task Force. He is dedicated to the protection and empowerment of trafficked people. In 2019, he was inducted as one of New York's abolitionists alongside President Jimmy Carter and Michael Bloomberg. And as for me, I am Roshani Shenazz, your facilitator and friend for this panel discussion. I am a Golden Door ambassador, a spiritual well-being coach who is an elated winner of the shared second prize winner at the Golden Door Awards 2020 for my essay, and also a bronze medalist at the Golden Door Rex Karmavir Truth Writers Fellowship Chakra Awards 2020. I would like to begin this panel by reading an extract from my award winning essay, The Pouch of Creation and Its Disuniting Beliefs. Most women in India, and perhaps many other parts of the world too, share this or similar experiences. In a way, I can relate to this story as I faced a similar ordeal during my younger years. Coming from a staunch Zoroastrian priestly family, I had to respectfully maintain a list of distressing do's and don'ts during my periods. There were strict prohibitions on touching family members, household things, and of course, praying during these so called unholy days. Would we ever consume expired medicine or operate an old system that is no longer compatible? No. Why then do we, an educated and intelligent species, continue to operate out of this obsolete version of inner programming called dogmas? Dogmas that have caused taboos, shame, frustration, stigmas, loathing, and have degraded one of the most crucial, natural, God gifted processes responsible for our very existence. It is a process that can be considered nothing short of miraculous if one actually took the time to understand it. With that, I open the floor by inviting each of our personalities, our wonderful panelists, to answer one round of questions that I would particularly want to ask them. And then we shall move into a generic questions floor by me taking on the action points that we would like to discuss today and culminating the discussion with a call to action. My first question goes to Kanta Singh from the UN Women. Kanta, I would like to ask you that women in rural areas are never made aware about menstrual hygiene. What are the key issues concerning access, usage, and disposal of menstrual products in the rural areas that UN Women is looking after? Kanta, can you? Oh, where is Kanta? Again. We'll have Kanta just come in.
I'm here, sorry.
Yes. So, Kanta, please, could you take the floor?
Sorry, I will have to come back to my phone. I have to come back to the phone, sorry. The laptop is acting very funny. So did you ask me any question which I didn't hear? You'll have to repeat yourself, Roshani, sorry.
I'd asked that women in rural areas are never made aware of menstrual hygiene. So, what are the key issues concerning that access, usage, and disposal of menstrual products and other hygiene levels and things taken care of in rural areas by UN Women?
Thank you very much, Roshni. In fact, there are several issues, not only menstrual hygiene, but there are many issues related to women's health that women are not aware of. When a girl starts having her first period, uh, she doesn't know who to go to. There's nobody who could guide her properly about the cycle, about the usage of hygiene products. Also, nobody tells her where to dispose them of. So it starts from lack of awareness to lack of access to lack of facilities to dispose menstrual hygiene products. So the cycle is so vicious that that young women continue to face a stigma for having period to begin with. So if a girl, I remember when I was a young girl and first time when I had my period, I was made to feel embarrassed, not by my family or my people around within the household, but also because I didn't share it with them. So when I told it to my sister-in-law, she started telling me that this is how you deal with this. But when I told my classmates, they really started laughing about it. And I didn't know whether to cry, whether to feel embarrassed. I really didn't know where to hide. And you also have to go to school. So also because the problem starts when you don't know about it, and then you don't know if a rural women actually get to buy anything to deal with the issue. So there's no money in that sense. Also, availability of clean clothes to use. So we grow up getting embarrassed about it, feeling ashamed of it, and then as a result, we never have a healthy relationships with our body. We don't know which part of the vaginal area this blood comes from. We don't know how many days. We don't know what will we do with the blood that will come, and if it happens to stain the sheet, then we seriously, families get offended. So there's a stigma attached to it. There's also no lack of guidance and lack of clarity on the issues. And my concern is that the way we are going and we are promoting sanitary pads and the kind of material that we use, we don't know how hygienic it is. Also, the disposal of these plastic pads and plastic within the pad is going to be problematic. We need to start thinking of it while we are promoting pads. We need to think of some ways to develop pads which are more user friendly. At least the young girls do not get any side effects of that, but more importantly, they do not create environmental havoc later. So these are some of the issues that I'd like to highlight now. I'll come back later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kanta, for this. And absolutely, yes, it is not about, sorry, it is not just about the stigmas concerning how we are made to feel ashamed of this very God gifted process in our bodies, but how we are completely almost ostracized from the society for those 5 days. And it is like an announcement where everybody around gets to know in the society that, or the community, that, oh, this girl has her period and it is those 5 days or 6 days of the month. So thank you very much for addressing that. I would now move on to the next question, to dear Elsa, who is doing some amazing work in the safekeeping of women across the globe through her app Safe City, which is an amazing app by itself. And later I would like her to throw some light upon it for us to know about it. But first, I would like to ask Elsa, what are some of the taboos on menstruation that you have heard of or experienced that hold women and girls back in achieving their goals or moving ahead in life?
Thanks, Roshni. And this is such an important discussion because women and girls comprise 50% of the world's population, and menstruation is part of our lives pretty much for 2/3 of our life. And yet, there's so much of mystery and mysticism sometimes about what menstruation is and how we must, and there's imposition on how we must behave and how we must conduct ourselves, right? So thankfully for me, in my family, we didn't have any such superstition, but the very common ones are don't touch a pickle, it'll go bad, don't bake a cake, it won't rise up, sorry, don't touch a plant, especially the tulsi plant, which is much revered in many households because it'll die, and so on and so forth. And what it does is it reinforces this notion that somehow during those days you are unclean, you're unfit to be in society, that your presence will pollute others, and that there'll be harmful consequences of you just mixing around. So how does it play out? Because I work on sexual violence, in a way, this is violence where you're depriving people of opportunities, depriving them to live a full life and explore what is available to them for those 3 to 7 days that one is undergoing their menstrual cycle. A lot of young girls stop going to school during that period of time. A lot of women might not go to work. Especially also now there's a lot of conversation around period pain. But if you didn't take the conversation of period pain and just talk about menstruation, and if the simple thing in your own family, if you're not accepted, why would you be accepted in larger society? So first it starts with your family, then it becomes your religious community where often you're not allowed to even worship, and then it's your a broader society where you may be working or you may be socializing in. And so your interactions start being policed and monitored and limited. And in maybe privileged households, it doesn't impact your ability to earn or your income, but in many other places, it could affect your education, choice of education, the ability to pick up a job of your choice, and also go to work and earn that living. And then you come to how each one's bodies react to the menstruation cycle. Again, for me, I had a very easy cycle throughout my life, but towards the end, because I'm already in the menopausal cycle, it started to become really heavy. But then these are things that we don't again talk about, right? Like whether you have mood swings, hormonal changes, and how your body constantly adjusts to these things throughout various cycles of your life. And you're afraid to talk about this to even your girlfriends. In many places. So I'm glad we are having this conversation because it kind of mainstreams it and starts to break down the taboos around so that it makes it easier for us to speak up. A lot of young girls might also have weight gain, or even older women. You might get acne on your face. And again, if you don't know it's associated with your menstrual cycle, you're not going to get the right care and take care of yourself. So like Kanta already said, it has greater implications on your larger health and your sense of well-being and self-esteem and confidence. So I would highly encourage everyone to just accept this as part of our daily life. It is part of a woman's daily life, and nobody else should be expected to dictate to her what she can or cannot do, or how she can or cannot behave.
Thank you so much, Elsa. That is such an important point. It is not just about the stigma again of those 5 days, but the offshoot. Everything, the bodily, the mental, the emotional, the hormonal changes that the woman goes through. And it comes up with one of these sentences which I so feel distressful about. Is it that time of the month? And you are just stumped when anything is wrong, and it need not be that your actions or any counter arguments that you do need to be in that time of the month. So there are so many things that emerge out of what you just shared, Elsa, and are so very important that we honor and we embrace the bodily, hormonal and emotional changes that the woman goes through during these times, and the accumulation over a period of, as you said, two-thirds of our life, at the end of it especially. And the insights that you shared, I'm sure that young women and girls in our audience, and the audience later on who listens to this panel and watches it on YouTube, are going to definitely do something about creating an official voice about this matter. So thank you so much, Elsa. We'll now move on to our next panelist, Mandy Sangera from UK. Now, Mandy also has been someone who has personally gone through a bit of stigma, not where she has allowed it to affect herself, but nonetheless, it is in place where anyone, any woman going through the same could have possibly crashed down mentally and emotionally. I would reach out to Mandy to share with us the health concern that she suffered and the stigmas concerning and surrounding it, and how she emerged and transcended out of that experience, which can give hope and courage to young women and girls out there. Mandy?
Thank you so much. It was really interesting to hear from Elsa, and actually one of the things that being brought up in a Sikh and a Hindu home was actually one of the things was that Sikhism really promoted equality, and we were allowed to go to the Gurdwara. Women were still able to go even though they were on period. But some of the things that you mentioned today really resonated with me, because as I was growing up and when I first started my period, grands and aunts would say to you not to do those things. But actually, I always had heavy periods when I was a teenager, but actually when I was 21, I ended up developing ovarian cancer, white cell cancer, ended up losing an ovary to cancer. And then I lost my 50% chances of ever having children. And sadly, growing up in a South Asian home in the community where, family children is so important to so many people, we've been conditioned, we've been told that this is how our life should be. But actually, it wasn't just cancer that I fought with. I ended up developing something called endometriosis, where the lining of my uterus was breaking away and my periods were so erratic. I was on like 2 times a month, sometimes 3 times a month. I didn't even know when I was going to come on. And actually, to the point where I was absolutely exhausted. And sometimes, you were running on empty. But actually, you know what? I was lucky that I had an amazing family that wanted to support me and wanted to be around me and support me. But actually, when I turned 36, I ended up having a hysterectomy and I actually lost all hope of ever having children. But as I've said to you previously, Roshni, I never look at my life as like, I always believe that if you lose something, you're going to be given something far greater. And I have been blessed with an amazing dharma, which a life purpose of helping other people. And also, as I've got older and as I've gone into my 50s now, and I've realized that actually God had a bigger plan for me. He needed me to go around the world and help people. Just recently, I've been involved with the Afghan, evacuations and supporting people. And for me, I realized that my life was so more important than just what society wanted it to be. But I have actually met women around the world because I've been so blessed to travel around the world 3 times around. And I have gone to, to the African continent, South America, to Asia and everywhere else around the world and met young women who don't have products for, to have a dignified period. And they're living in, in poverty and don't have, products to use. And, then it just made me realize, actually, do you know what? Even though I was growing up with all these health conditions, but at least I had dignity, I had respect for myself, and I was able to buy, products and been able to have a dignified period. So one of the things that I would say is that actually we need to change society's attitudes and mindsets, because actually, gynae problems are so more prominent today than they've ever been. And actually we need to smash the shame around the labels that we give women around being a mother, being a wife, and when women are not being able to have children. I mean, I've been called barren, I've been called all sorts of awful names, but I rise above it because actually, it tells me more about those people than it does about me. And I've been so blessed with amazing nieces and nephews. And one thing I've realized is that you can give them back and you don't have to have them. So you know what, you have to look at all the blessings in your life and count every day as a real blessing and be full of gratitude to everybody. And all I would say to you, that it's so important that, when we meet young people, because, endometriosis affects so many young women around the world and have such horrific heavy periods. Women can't get out of bed for some days because the pain is so bad. The hormone balances and the changes in your moods and things like that. It's not about just being a stroppy old teenager. This is about actually looking at the issues. And I've, have supported my own nieces now over the years to get checked, make sure that they don't have endometriosis. Sadly, it is hereditary sometimes. And when my nieces have heavy periods, I want to be there to support them and have conversations and be very honest with them and not be ashamed, about the stigma that some parts of our community hold. So I'll just end it there because I'd like to give everyone else an opportunity. So thank you there, Roshani.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Thank you so much. The thought at a young age of 36 to have hysterectomy and completely lose all hope of having your own children, where this entire again pressure of having your own children is another stigma of sorts, because
Yeah.
there is so much of widespread awareness about adoption. There are so many kids needing homes, but this entire thing of the pressure on women to give birth to a son, to make sure that you have kids, and not less than months that you've got married, the entire household is like packing on closing on to you on when is the good news, when is the good news. Oh my god, that could be the most bad news for the young girl who has just got married. So I can, least imagine, Mandy, what you could have gone through internally, while the entire societal and family thought pressure would be that you can no more have kids. So hats off to your courage to pass through that, and come out of it and give your voice to this important topic. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
We now move on to our man in the house, Jerome Alam. Jerome, I would like to ask you that how can we actively engage men in ending these harmful stereotypes in the patriarchal society setup that we are in, and contribute to violence against women. Now, violence, I do not just mean physical domestic violence, Jerome, because emotional and mental violence that a woman goes through because of these stigmas is far higher, I'm sure, in statistics, if they were to be recorded, than the physical abuse, which is also very, very dominant and present. So, your thoughts on how can we include men in the conversation and allow them to break the ice, break the ceiling, and involve the inclusion in the voice of women?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. I am absolutely humbled to be amongst such amazing, courageous women and heroes here today, because what you've accomplished so far has been just groundbreaking. And I know working together will do so much more. But we have to really overcome this fear and ignorance on the part of men in this world. My own story as a survivor of child sex trafficking is that I struggled with that toxic masculinity, and if it wasn't for a female survivor who taught me that I could be a man and I could be a victim and be vulnerable, I would not be sitting here today. So we've got to overcome those incredible stereotypes, because we talk about the emotional and psychological impacts of these taboos, what we call adverse childhood experiences, and how they keep coming back over a lifetime and detract from that person's ability to be who they truly are. We've got to really make that change, because not engaging women and understanding what they go through physically, mentally, emotionally is like trying to play a violin with one hand tied behind your back. We have to really be engaged in this conversation and make sure that as men, we can understand these things, because I myself personally, there's nothing more beautiful than a woman and her ability to enlighten others and be a change maker. And we should respect a woman and her body and what she goes through and be supportive, because again, I would say this of my wife and my daughter, I could not do what I do right now here today without their support. So it's important to have them involved. It's important to understand this is nothing to fear. This is natural. This is normal. This is part of a woman's physiology, her biology. So we have to just keep having conversations like this. And I hope we can engage more men in this conversation, because and I really want to frame this, because everyone here today, one of the things I have to really make clear to those who are in, the West, is that what all of you struggle against within your own culture is so momentous. I mean, the violence and fear and shame that is imparted upon you is unconscionable and enraging. I mean, I've been engaged in several issues involving India and Africa, and I've had pushback from men in those countries. And I told them, I said, thank you. You just made me fight harder, because we cannot tolerate this violence against women. We cannot let this go on. I mean, too many lives have been lost, impacted negatively. So I vow right now, this moment, to fight even harder to make sure that this stops, and that women are respected, and that they're not put down for their natural bodily functions. So I'm just honored to be here today and to begin the fight for this cause.
Thank you, Jerome. That is so encouraging and so powerful, because it is extremely important. This entire gender bias as well. I think the he for she and she for she is so very important in the entire conversation across the globe, with every conversation that is concerning gender biases or the patriarchal society pressures, dogmas, stigmas, stereotypes, everything. So thank you, Jerome, for lending your very intimate experience with us, which has led you to where you are today, and thankful that you are with us in this conversation. We now move on to our dear panelist, who is a sweet, shy, soft spoken, but a very, very powerful doer, Najat Muhammad. So, Najat, I would like to ask you, what can be done to improve the awareness about these stigmas and myths associated with menstruation? What do you think, or if anything, Global One has done in Kenya and any other places to address these issues? Please share with us.
Thank you, Roshini. Thank you, everybody. I hope I'm clear. I'm audible. I'm glad to be here. I'm really honored, and I'm so happy to be part of this special event today. And I know everywhere in the world, women go through a lot of violence, and they suffer a lot from stigmas, even if it is from mostly associated with reproductive health. My organization work on addressing stigma towards fistula, and we work a lot on reproductive health issues in our communities. But in this case, we also work on menstrual hygiene management a lot. And in my area, when I was growing up, although we are not told to stay in a separate room or don't do this, but there is a lot of stigma when we talk about menstruation, because like, no, my mother could not tell me what to do when I experienced I didn't know. I thought only the married women experience menstruation. I never knew that girls menstruate. And the first time I menstruated, I was in class 7, and I could not stand up. I had to stay there during the break time because my skirt is wet, and I could not stand up. And I still remember the shame I felt. I went through, and it was during I had to stay on the desk throughout until everybody went for lunch. That's when I had to go out and take care of myself. So I didn't know even how to do. So in my area, people don't talk about. Girls are not told what to do. It's like a shame to talk about that. These are the issues that we really need to work on. So I feel like we have to work with mothers. We have to we have to tell the mothers that period is anything. People go to toilet and take care of themselves, to washroom, take care of themselves, and they are not ashamed. When it comes to period, I really wonder why everywhere in the world anything to do with women is associated with stigma. Anything, natural things. So like, we have to educate our youths, we have to educate our women, we have to educate our girls, we have to educate our elders, the religious leaders, the community leaders, youths, and and we have to start in school also, as early as possible. This stigma issue should be erased at all cost. So my thinking is like, we have to start earlier in school academies, and we have to work with our mothers, especially where I come from. Most of the people are illiterate, and 85% of our population lives in rural area, and out of that, more than 60% don't access education, and they don't get to know what period is, how to handle themselves, what to tell their girls. I hear from some communities, when the first a girl experience her menstruation the first time, it's celebrated in some communities. So those are the things that we have to tell our people and address this issue. As Global One, we do work on menstrual hygiene management. So we train girls, boys, mothers, elders, the religious leaders, youth representatives, and every part of for the target communities we work with, we do train everybody. We have community dialogues where we talk only on menstruation. So it's like hard for people to talk about, even for women to talk about menstruation. They feel it's a topic not to dare talk about. So we train them, and fortunately, many girls can talk about it, many boys can talk about it. We train the boys like to accept girls if if she maybe wet her spoils her skirts in class, so nobody can laugh at her, nobody can jeer, or she can comfortably go and take care of herself. So these are what we do, train people. And also we give products to women who cannot, and girls who cannot access menstrual management product. Those are the things that we do, Rashni. Yeah, thank you very
Brilliant.
much.
Brilliant, Najat, brilliant. And Najat, you just were bullseye on this incident, and it is a part of my essay as well, because I've experienced and I have seen that, known that personally as well, on how when it breaks through and you come to know of that aha moment when you first get it, most of the women, girls, do not know about it. And in the story, in the essay also, where the little girl kind of gets her periods in school, and everybody sees the blood, everybody is scared, some are laughing, and the teacher is trying to calm the whole classroom, and she says, what's wrong, is she going to die? They say, no, no, this happens with every girl, at some point. So the child says, oh, you mean to say all the girls are going to die? And there is so much lack of awareness about what is happening. And this entire taboo, rightly enough, that women, the she for she, which I said, is very important. Today, if you see our, these soap serials and movies and stuff like that, I feel distressed to see that it is the mother in law who is brainwashing and trying to push to having a son born out of a daughter-in-law. It is the mother-in-law who is pushing the taboo topic of not talking, or the mother asking the child or the girl to say, oh, you have to suffer, you have to, women are to be like this, and women are to endure every possible nonsense. Why do we do that? And if women come out with stronger voices on how we can stand to embrace this gift, this miraculous gift of procreation, otherwise, none of us would be here if this would not be there. And it is such an important conversation, Najat, as you said, for helping women to support women firstly, and then saying, hey, men, you guys support us as well. So, thank you, Najat, for addressing that and the work you do with the rural women. And sorry, one more point that you stressed on, which is also very important, and it's a part of our call to action, is sensitizing people, sensitizing men, women, boys, and girls, mothers and fathers, brothers and bosses and associates, and everyone about this topic. That there is no laughter, there is no stereotyping, there is no ridiculing that should happen when the woman or the girl is going through this. So the sensitization is extremely important in the awareness programs as well. And I totally agree with you on that. We now move on to our medical and scientific angle, because there are so many myths connected to menstruation, which are totally complete hogwash. And unless and until, sadly enough, science puts a seal stamp to it, we will keep believing it for lifetimes and lifetimes. So I have with us Major Dr. Meeta Singh, and I want her to touch upon how to demystify certain menstrual taboos across the society, from rural to adolescent girls to educated society. I'm sadly to say that a lot of educated and so-called cultured, westernized, modernized society also have these strong taboos and stigmas attached. So, Dr. Meeta, the floor is yours. Please unmute, Dr. Meeta.
Am I audible? Yes, great. I've been listening to the fabulous speakers and the deeply insightful experiences from across the world. And I'm afraid we also have a similar story in our country, in India, where across the board, myths related to menstruation are abounding. And they are across the board, as in women from very high class, upper middle class families also face taboos of impurity related with menstruation. And of course, in the villages, for the last 21 years, I've been working in the villages of Rajasthan. And I can tell you that this is a very difficult thing for all young girls to deal with as they grow up, as they reach puberty, because it's so mystified. And it's important to remove these misconceptions regarding menstruation, the myths related to it. So I travel a lot to villages, and I have a whole panel of colleagues and young volunteers who have been trained as trainers, and we try and reason it out with the young people, because ultimately I feel that it is the youth, the younger people, who we need to invest our energies in. So it's like asking, it's a question and answer. That pickle goes bad because if you touch it during your period, it's impure, it's dirty. So I tell them, does the pickle know that I'm having my period? Does the jam know I'm having my period? It doesn't. Another thing, in India, we worship the goddesses. So there is the goddess of learning, Saraswati, there's the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, there's the goddess of valor, Durga. All these are women. And if they are women, they have uteruses. They also have, if they have uteruses, they also have periods. So if the goddesses are having periods, then how can it be impure? It is not impure. And so these kind of logic, these kind of explanations work well with them. The other thing I talk to them about is the scientific basis of how fungus spores are there. They abound in the atmosphere, and in the during the monsoons, they come and settle on food, on leather, and that's how fungus grows. So please don't blame the period for it. Another popular myth is that we have a holy plant called the tulsi, the basil, the holy basil, which is there in every home. And it's usually in a small pot. So after all the nutrition is taken away, it dies. But it is blamed on some young girl who's having her period, who's crossed that plant and her shadow has fallen upon it. So it's also very cruel in a way that the poor girl is made to feel um, ashamed and impure. And if you keep telling her month after month that she's impure, that she's dirty, her body is dirty, then it gets internalized and it takes away from the self-confidence. Now, to deal with this, of course, there is a lot of uh, programs and projects by the government of India, especially after the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which is the Teach the Girl Child and Save the Girl Child um, program that has been launched across the nation. And that has helped to bring this issue out from the closet into the mainstream narrative. And I think that has been very helpful. So now young girls are being provided sanitary napkins in their schools. Unfortunately, during the corona pandemic, there was a problem of supply. So the girls wrote to the chief medical officers, to the medical officers of those districts, and said, please arrange for our supplies. And they did it through the kindergarten care centers so that the supplies to the young girls would continue. Also, another very important strategy that we've tried to use and has been very helpful is talking to men and boys and sensitizing them, because correct and complete knowledge of the human body is something every young boy and girl are curious about. And when we address this curiosity on a scientific platform, very simplified, without scientific jargon, but telling them the correct and complete details of their own bodies, then that is a very powerful strategy and that helps. I'm saying this because community mobilization is the single most important thing that helps to change mindsets. Policies help, but they have to be implemented. The implementation has to be in the field. So ultimately, the community has to understand and get mobilized through elected representatives, which we call the panchayats in our country. And that is how we've been able to break the shroud of secrecy, and this is more out in the open. It's about menstrual health management in a scientific way, in a sensitive way, and in a sustained manner, so that the girls can grow up with dignity. I'm chairperson of the Dignity of Girl Child Foundation. So dignity of girls and women is my mission in life.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meeta. And yes, there are several ones, especially like the entire part of our sacred parts. I would say being dirty to be spoken about. The taboo about speaking about your sacred parts. It is from the smallest to the biggest of the thing actually. So it is in how things accumulate. I feel that when we ill treat the small details of our life, we gather and accumulate over a period of a lifetime how we address the big issues. And it goes for me to read a little bit before we go into the next round of our generic questions from my essay. Eons back, womanhood was respected and even worshipped. In many ancient historic cultures, a menstruating woman was considered sacred and powerful. It was experienced that during this time, she was gifted with increased intuition, psychic abilities, and was strong enough to heal the sick and even grant wounds. Women were kept away from their daily chores, pampered, and sometimes the sacred period was even worshipped in eagerness to receive some sort of power and blessings during those special days. She was not allowed to cook or do anything stressful. Thus was born the concept of being away from the kitchen, her core area of work as a homemaker. Now, paying such obeisance to the feminine power could very possibly have been the reason the tables turned, given society's patriarchal mindsets. Anything that took away from the ego of the male species or emerged as more authoritative was considered dangerous throughout human history, and in many ways holds true even today. The human race, at the very onset of time, seemed to have realized that the only way a civilization could be controlled was to instill a fear of the unknown and a fear of the unseen. The obvious choice being, you guessed it right, God. Slowly but surely, many imposing factors in society were enforced under the pretext of religion. After all, God would not come down to defend himself, nor can he provide any clarifications. Over time, comprehension dawned on me that it was not just the rural and unschooled that needed to be educated about menstruation. The so called accomplished yet dogmatic society needed it too, maybe more so. It said that a knowledgeable person who does things in ignorance is far worse than a person who is not knowledgeable at all. So, this panel, this discussion, and all our esteemed panelists here, I would say, are giving a voice so that we may be educated and we not just turn up to be cultured, westernized, and modernized, but show sympathy, have more compassion, have more empathy, have more understanding. This is because we have allowed our megalomania to progress while the inner spirit and consciousness has regressed into this dogmatic thinking. And with that, I would like to get on to the next round of questions, the pointers that we jointly discussed as a panel. I would open up the questions and would request an unmute from any one of the panelists who would like to answer that. One of the major myths we touched upon, touching pickles and jams, one of the major things that a woman is kind of put down upon for these times of the month is no access to God, prayers, and meditation, and things like that. You cannot go into the temples. You cannot do your prayers. The vibrations of the words of the prayers cannot be said out of a woman who's going through her periods. Would anybody like to address it? I have tons to say on it, but I want our esteemed panelists to address this. Would anyone like to begin addressing? Yes, Dr. Meeta.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Indeed, religion has played a major role in ascribing impurity and dirt and everything that it should not be to a physiological process like menstruation. And this has impacted womankind in a huge way across the board, across centuries. It's been passed down from centuries down to from the ancient times to now. Of course, you do talk about how the goddess was worshipped for her power of creation. But as we went along, patriarchy came into being and became so strong that it became a very important and a very useful tool for them to control reproductive functions of a woman, her choices, and to limit her mobility. So it was one way of ensuring that 50% of these women stay out of their hair through control and through fear. They instilled fear into them that if they prayed during this period, then it was blasphemy. It was blasphemy. But then there are also examples of the Sikh religion where women are allowed to go into the gurudwaras, the Sikh temples, and pray throughout the month. It doesn't matter. As a little girl, I remember I always felt it was wrong to be kept out. So my sisters and I would never reveal to anybody what was happening to us. And I remember going to the temple as a young girl, and I never bothered about it. One day I told my mother that God understands, He's created us, and that is the way we are. And especially when it comes to the mother goddess, all women are actually an image of the mother goddess. And if the mother goddess is pure, so are all these women. And these are the kind of interesting dialogues we've been having with religious leaders as well. It hurts them to listen to this, but we have been trying to bring them on board and talking to them in terms of ensuring that it must be understood on a scientific basis. That is the most important thing. Dr. Malti Gupta has also mentioned, one of a very, very senior doctors, the first plastic surgeon of Rajasthan, a highly respected doctor. And she also believes that it is the boys and men who need to be sensitized. And that is a very, very powerful strategy. It has to be done on the field, on the ground, and policies are important, but they are not sufficient. Their implementation has to be done in spirit, and that is possible only through human interactions. True, and a lot of media. Media support is also very, very important. Thank you.
True, Dr.
And I would just like to...
Yes, Mandy. Mandy, we cannot hear you clearly.
Sorry, it's Mandy again. So one of the other things that I would like to discuss is that actually, there has been harmful cultural practices that will happen, like FGM, and in India they call it Ghatna, which happens in the Bora tribe as well. So I think that, that we need to look at educating people, because actually as soon as a girl has a period in some communities, they think she's ready for marriage. So sometimes people will blame, witchcraft and juju in some places. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. And some of these things are nothing to do with religion. They are cultural practices that have been sent down, and where in places like Africa, if only 25% of the population has been educated, they're learning from their elders, they're learning from their ancestors. We have a long way to go. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Mandy. Absolutely. Yes. And this important aspect, I'm just steering away again towards the medical part, because that is very, very important. The shamefulness, the stinking, the smell, the cleaning of the vagina. And there are so many things that are pressured onto young girls. And when they want to talk about it, when they want to learn about it, it's a taboo to speak. How do we bridge that gap? How do we make young mothers aware of standing up and being there for their daughters and with their daughters, and not in the hiding of the closet, but be open in the discussion if they have two siblings, which is a brother and a sister, and address both of them? How do we do that?
Roshani, I believe it comes down to education at all levels. So first of all, starting in school for the young girls themselves. I remember when I was in school, my introduction to menstrual health was through the Johnson & Johnson courtesy call, where they came to distribute pads. It shouldn't be like that. It should be an ongoing conversation starting from an early age, and then moving along, exploring your body, trying to help you think through the hormonal changes that you're going through, and creating those spaces for you to come forward and ask your questions and clarify what's going on. Today, everybody has access to the internet, but we won't have any control as to what kind of information they are seeking or getting if we don't do it in a formal process. So that's one. The second one is, when we expect mothers to talk to their children, have those mothers been the recipient of such conversations from their own mothers? I highly doubt that. So creating an educational component for them too, so that they can very easily and with clarity explain to their children what's going on with their bodies. And when I say children, talking to the boys also about menstruation. It shouldn't be only talking to the girls. All children should be spoken to about what's going on, so that they can start learning to respect each other. So respect came up in the chat. And truly, if we don't understand each other, how are we going to have healthy, respectful relationships, which are also consensual? And then the last bit is about, rights. It's a matter of rights. When a woman's body, Mandy already said that in many cultures, the minute you get your first period, they believe that you're ready to get married, right? What is the purpose of the marriage? To produce children. So often the only thing that institutions and governments and people in society look at women for is like a baby producing machine. And when you look at even some of the policies, sometimes it's okay, you can only have one child, and then suddenly their population declines. Then they have a new policy saying you can have now 3 children, as though a woman doesn't have any control and any voice in the say of how her body is being used, or how many children she feels she wants to have or is equipped to have, more importantly. And the last bit when we talk about rights is having access to menstrual products and menstrual health, good quality ones. Because if you talk about India, even in rural, not just rural areas, even in urban areas, women don't have access to sanitary products. They're just way too expensive, or, women are not aware that these products exist, and they're still using leaves and ash and all kinds of things. And then, of course, the harm to the environment, right? So we need to look at it holistically, provide the information, provide the resources, provide the health access, and remove completely the taboo and the stigma around it.
Thank you so much, Elsa. That is so very, very important, extremely vital, because it is, as we said earlier as well, that it is not just about the menstruation, but the things that the woman goes through, the changes that she goes through, the cycle of puberty, the pregnancy, the postpartum, the menopause, and every role play that she dedicatedly kind of performs during these entire changes. It is like one hard day's work and your mood is changed, and the man would kind of want rest or not want to converse anything, and so many things like that. Now imagine the woman who is going through not just things that are very visible to her, but she's going through things that are invisible to her as well, where she does not know the process. She does not know what is happening on the autopilot within her. And it is so important that we take this onto the world stage of bringing awareness through across all of these cycles, and how important it is to give a legitimate voice and remove these things from the categories of taboos and stigmas. I would go on to our next question and asking any other of our panelists to join in, that how do you think during crises and adversities like this pandemic or the Afghan issue and issues like that we face globally, can women be protected? Again, we are, history repeats itself and we never learn. I have not understood, why do we not learn? We learn good enough to go on the moon and go on to make Mars another Earth, but we do not learn these simple things of honoring humanity. So, what is it that we can do from top down? What are the things that we could possibly generate at the change maker level in authorities and governments that could bring about, again, a legitimate voice for women to, have a world platform?
Roshani, can I come in?
Yes, yes, Kandat.
So 3 points that I wanted to make. One is when it comes to women's health or women's, particularly menstrual health, it is considered a women's issue. So that means only women will talk to women about it around women. So men conveniently, I would say, would not like to be involved, including the government. Only with great advocacy and noises that government has started paying attention to supplying pads to girls now. So one is that we need to break the cycle of talking to women's issues about women within women. we need to make it a broad-based issue, number one. Secondly, we are talking about women who are healthy like us, who have had, fortunately, a healthy life cycle. Think about 50 million women who are disabled, physically, mentally. Just imagine their plight. There are about 3 million, 4 million, maybe more, 30 million, I think, tribal women in this country who really didn't have access to education or didn't have access to so-called healthy, means to protect their bodies. Very recently, they have started getting access to these things. Number two. Thirdly, during crisis, I don't know how many of us have heard about gynec issues that women face during the COVID last almost 18 months now. We're just focusing on COVID as if every other problem has vanished from this earth. So during crisis, and you think of a situation where there are floods, there is hurricane, there is some cyclone happening. Till 1999, when we had the cyclone in South India, disaster preparedness was not gender responsive. And very, very, with great effort in 1999, when this happened, we, many UN agencies included, started supplying pads to women who were affected because of the cyclone. So it is not only the pandemic kind of a situation, even during natural calamities, women's health is always ignored. A pregnant woman or a woman who's lactating, the child, she has to also feed her baby, but herself first to feed her baby, right? So we don't think of women's health during these periods. Cancer, gynec issues, pregnancies, miscarriages, everything was happening when pandemic was happening now. But nobody was talking about those issues. Again, I'm saying because women's health is not everybody's issues. So we need to identify stakeholders for whom it makes business sense or political sense to address women's issues, whether these are sanitary pad making companies, whether it is pharmaceutical companies, whether it is government. When they need vote, they put this in the manifesto that we will supply pads to girls. Throughout the 5 years, nobody pays attention to that. So whether the pads are of good quality, whether they are being made through local means, whether they are environmental disasters, I mean, nobody pays attention to that once it has been written in the manifesto. But even in the manifesto, it has been written very recently. So what I'm saying is, as a group, we need to advocate for making menstrual hygiene a bigger issue than what it is. And last thought from my side would be that the reproductive health of women, again, is women don't have control over it, whether it is about children, having how many of them, whether they can have abortion, and you know how, if you are following what is happening in US every day, how many children to have, when to have miscarriage, what happens to her if she's raped and then she's having child. The kind of trouble that a woman has in just being a woman and her health is really, I don't know how do we survive, by how do we reach 60 and in what mental and physical condition. It's really important that we start making it and is as normal as we eat food. So thank you.
Thank you, Kanta. And I have moist eyes while you spoke, because it is, this very fact of the thought of so many times you hear parents, especially in the marginalized societies where our foundation is working with, this very fear of I hope I don't have a girl, just kills you in the stomach, just hearing about it, that this woman does not want a girl. And it reminds me of this thing when I started the foundation primarily, which was for our teachers, and today it is Teachers Day, 5th of September, and I'm honored to just say that it is for those teachers for who I am today. And life is the biggest teacher. We are fortunate, we are blessed that we have surpassed, we have transcended, but there are millions who cannot transcend these taboos and stigmas. And one of our attendees, Mr. Deepak, was mentioning that can we not just make it gender focused and talk about uplifting humanity? Yes, this conversation is to uplift humanity, but sadly, most of the taboos and stigmas are connected to the women species and therefore seems gender conversation. But it is not, because all of these taboos affect the entire family as a whole. Who is anybody at large to decide that suddenly you can have 3 kids? God damn, I can't put food on my own table to eat. How do you tell me that I need now 3 kids? And then when I have everything sufficient to really create some good human beings, I'm told you need to have only 1 kid. So, yes, the dynamics, but ultimately, as Elsa said, who is to suffer? The baby making machine. Nobody else has to suffer actually, but it is she who has to bear the brunt. And therefore, yes, the conversation is going to seem gender biased, but it's not gender biased. It's gender focused. It's gender centric because, unfortunately, as I said, all of this is surrounding. And therefore, we want to. I know of men, I had my own father, I know of brothers, I know of husbands who are standing strong behind their women and with their women. And I call upon all of them with applause, just like Jerome is for standing by the women. But we need to magnify, we need to multiply these voices. It cannot be just a Jerome in a panel talking about this. We have to clone the Jeromes, we have to clone the Robs, we have to clone Jerry Almeidas of the world to talk about things that we need to on the world platform. And that can only happen when we do not stereotype even discussions like this, that this is a gender based discussion. No, it is not. It is a humanity discussion. So, coming up next, before we move towards our next last chunk of minutes of our discussion, that, conversations like this, I would like to address with each one of you talking about at least one or two other taboos and stigmas or stereotypes that you are aware of or that you have experienced. Like example, I have experienced a lot: men don't cry, boys don't cry, don't have to show your emotions, and you make them cold, lack of empathy right from childhood by drilling that into their head, which makes them less compassionate about the needs of the spouse or the sister or the mother or anyone else. So let's open the floor with such across the gender and humanity related taboos and stigmas that are affecting us. And
So
I
I
would
think
like Najat to open the floor on that.
Thank you, Roshini. Thank you. I'm glad. Um, yeah, there's so many taboos when it comes to women and girls. And before I go to that, can I speak on the issue of religion and menstruation just for a minute? Yeah, for example, in Islam, women are not supposed to go to mosque. Women are not supposed to touch when menstruating. Women are not supposed to touch the Quran, and women are not supposed to pray. But you know, you when you look recently, I looked into it deeply, and I came to understand it's not about the religion. The thing is more about the culture. You know, communities, as you we all know, that is patriotic, and they feel it's.
Najat, can I just interfere? Najat, could you just hold? There is crackling sound. Don't hold on the mic that you're holding. Yeah, hold it from the wire, maybe, not on that part, because the voice is cracking. Yeah, yeah,
How about now? Is it clear? Am I clear?
perfect.
Okay, so, sorry about that. And so it's more about the culture. I feel like, for example, in Islam, I came to understand that a woman can pray, but she is not obliged to pray the 5 times prayers. But she can just, anytime she feels, she can sit down on the mat and pray to God anytime she wants. She can, during those 5 times, she can even sit down or lie down because of her situation. She can pray. So that's why I say it's very important for us to understand more about the religion also, because it's related to culture, and most of the gender-based violences happen because of cultural issues. To me, that's my understanding. And when it comes to general taboos, in where I come from, Like if a man cries, it's like it's unheard of. How can you are a woman, what happened, you cry like a woman, that's, so it's not like, so the men becomes hard, and they cannot laugh, they cannot play with the children, they have to be that masculine capacity or ability, they have to be harsh, strong, and this, that is everywhere, and it happens to where I come from. And in fact, when I was about 5 years in standard 5, I was almost given out to be married, because they feel like now my uncles and aunt like told my mom she's now a big girl, she needs to let her drop out of the school and get married and also help you with household, cause you have so many children. My mom like had 10 kids, and I was third born, and they wanted me to drop out of the school and take care of the kids with her. You see, and then they want to give the opportunity for the boys to get education, not the girls. If the family has financial issues and a boy and a girl are there, the opportunity is given to the boy, and the girls drop out of the school. So luckily for me, my mom stood up for me, and she said, I didn't go to school. I asked people to read for me letters if it comes, and I can't read, I can't write, but I don't want that to happen to my daughter, and I don't want her to get married now. And she, luckily she stood up for me, and alhamdulillah, I'm where I am today. But then these issues, these gender-based violence happens to girls. But and then also on a wider thing, there's policies, so many policies have been developed in Kenya, for example. There's so many policies positive for women and girls, but implementation is not there. In terms of when there are crises, humanitarian crisis, I don't know why food is sent to crisis affected areas, while pads or menstrual hygiene management materials are not sent. Nobody remembers about that. So I think we need to, as you say, the voice have to be amplified. We have to raise our voice for this, and make sure that women issues should be everybody's issue and should be mainstreamed in every sector. Thank you, Roshani, and everybody.
Thank you, Najat. Thank you. So very important, Najat, as you said, that we want to. And we did that right now with the flood affected areas and stuff like that, where other amenities and stuff were sent. We sent out a lot of clothes and sanitary pad packets and stuff like that, because nobody, unfortunately, thinks of that part. And their access becomes more. And Dr. Weiching, who is there in our audience as well, she's one of our co-winners of the Golden Door Awards, and also a very integral part of the GDA family, mentioned about the COVID inoculations that have caused irregularities in menstrual cycles and excessive clotting and bleeding and a whole lot of things, because now the family was all staying together. Earlier they were still going to work, the girls were going to school, and the entire taboo system of not touching this, not doing this, not praying and all of that with all family members in the house was a complete chaos for many. So let's carry on with the general taboos and stigmas, and if anybody wants to touch upon this part as well.
So
I was
Roshni,
going to bring Jermaine in. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, go on. Oh, sorry.
Yes, Elsa, sorry.
sorry, Mandy. So the very fact that this kind of a discussion is seen as a women's issue is also a stigma, because it's not true. A woman's body is, and her womb, some person on this earth has come from a woman's womb, right? Therefore, it is in everybody's interest that her body and her womb are healthy and safe and not, subject to violence, because you don't want to be part of that trauma that she has experienced. And if you are, then you have latent trauma already to begin with, if you are a baby born from such a womb. So I think men need to start understanding that it is their problem as well. That is one big stigma. The second stigma is also this idea that, women's issues are not important, and therefore not meant to be discussed in the larger audience. When we have any panel or event on gender, it's only the women who show up, very few men, like Jerome might show up, and again, that's self defeating, because the ones who need to hear it don't show up. How does it play out? Because think about COVID. During COVID, women also were working from home, but their responsibilities tripled. They had to care for their family. They had to also take on the education of their children. So it was like a triple whammy. Before COVID, one of the McKinsey studies said that Indian women did, on an average, daily 5.5 hours of domestic care work. And 5.5 hours on a daily basis is pretty much a second job. And now on top of that, you had the care of your children, because of the education being from home, online, plus anybody else who's fallen ill at home. How many men take paternity leave? And when they take paternity leave, do they actually do the work of a parent, like the mother, or do they just sit at home and use it as an extension of their annual leave? Even Sweden, which is a very egalitarian country and has very generous family leave protocols and policies, only a few percentage, it's not 100% of the men who take it. It's like more like 14% of the men who avail of those generous leave policies. So there has to be this cultural mindset, right? That care is the responsibility of every individual who brings a child into the world, and not just the female part of that couple. And then again, if you think about the violence against women and girls, which is perpetrated, I feel because of this whole idea of women being secondary citizens and not very important in society, right from birth, where there's a high female feticide rate, to child marriage, to dowry related deaths, to lack of financial independence, and regular daily violence of all kinds within your home, on the streets, in public transport, and at the workplace. I think we need to relook at how we view women in society and recalibrate our mindset, so that our interactions with each other are more respectful, consensual, and safe.
Wow. Thank you, Elsa, for such very hard hitting, crucial points that we need to take into consideration and really amplify them for putting them into action. Thank you so much. Yes. So, Mandy, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very short because I'm conscious of time and I'd like to give Jermaine the floor. All I would like to say is that we have seen, like Elsa's just said, humanitarian crisis, and we've seen a lot of things, and women are often suffering. And we have seen during the Afghan crisis recently that women have been, totally displaced without any kind of belongings, and they've just got their thing. So I just think that it's really important that if you're in a position to use your voice, that you empower and give other people an opportunity, that we become a voice for the voiceless, help the helpless by being selfless. That's the point that I would like to do, and pass the mic over to Jermaine because I'm just worried about the time. Thank you.
Oh God,
Yes,
thank you, Mandy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think clearly Afghanistan is really a symptom of a larger problem that we see in the world today, and it's a lack of respect for women. It's a lack of acknowledgement of women and their value. And I think that I've been so inspired by Mandy's work with Afghan refugees, and to see these women protesting, out in public against the Taliban. I mean, if that isn't inspiring, I don't know what is. And we have to really rally behind them, support them, because, we need to have everyone valued, everyone respected, and make sure that they understand how valuable they are to society. Because as I was saying in the chat, that woman could be the person who cures cancer. That woman could be the doctor who saves your life. So I think it's critical as men that we understand, how important it is to lift women up, to have them as partners, because we can accomplish so much together, as equals, as partners. And like, you said so eloquently, this is a humanitarian issue. not a gender issue. And I think we have to unite together, as a global community to help fight these issues and make sure that no one goes through this horrific ordeal of being, stereotyped and put down because of nature, because of their biology, because we have more important issues to focus on. I mean, there are so many things in our world today we need to gather together and work on, that people are suffering. I mean, and, we talk about COVID and how it impacted. Mandy and I did several global conferences, and we talked about how sanitary products had basically dried up in terms of getting to the rural areas in India and Africa. So we've got to do more to support women around the world, and as men, just get over it, get over that fear and ignorance. And educate and just make sure that we're not defeating our best ally in the fight to make this world a better place.
Thank you so much, Jerome. Thank you so much. Such an important and valid point of keeping the focus on not gender, but on overall humanity, and to come together, because ultimately, whatever genders are there, these are the genders which comprise of the humanity. So there is no escaping of not talking about the gender. It is like saying, when you are staying from the States and you've come from the States, you will say, oh, an American friend has come over. Now, you are not stereotyping it, but that's what you will say. So some things are very definitives, and we need to understand that this awareness is a call to action for all of us. And it begins from the self. Charity begins at home. It begins from our own homes, how we are treating our house help, how we are treating the women in the house, how we are treating the women in the neighborhood. And this calls for us of what we will do when we are called upon to do something for the world. So I would like I would like Kanta to say, and then go on to Dr. Meeta for her medical approach on it. Yes, Kanta.
I just want to share some very disturbing thing, and I hope people will take it in that spirit. I used to work in Tihar jail at some point in time with women prisoners. And this woman, not very affluent, but a poor woman, would come to me every day, and we were not supposed to know for what case they are in for. So she would just talk to me saying, hey, where do you live, ma'am? Can you go to my house once? And I would ask her that, request her that I can't go to your house. We are not supposed to be interacting with you socially. I'm here to do your welfare when you are in the jail. And one day, but I asked her, I said, what is it that you want me to go for? And she said, my daughter is 13 and she's living with an alcoholic father. My husband is an alcoholic. And I'm scared that she'll have her periods, and then if he starts abusing her physically, she will get pregnant or something. That feeling has not left me as to how vulnerable women who are in difficult circumstances, how do they deal with crises like that? I cry when I think of that woman. Of course, I couldn't go to her house. I couldn't do anything about that. But look at her mother's fear, where instead of asking me to say, go to and meet her husband and say, get pads to her if she has period, can you get her pads from the shop? She's scared about that girl. It's very, very, very scary situation in that sense. But Meeta and I have worked together for several years on sex selection and as they say, female feticide, as they say. We have seen all kinds of difficult situations where women are in, and starting with pregnancy and their fears and how their families start talking to them differently if they come to know they have a baby boy or a fetus in their womb, or if they have, because there used to be tests and those which were prohibited. We have seen how societies treat the women. And Elsa said it very rightly that it makes perfect sense for men to invest in women, because what kind of children would they like to have? Would they like to have healthy babies, or would they like to have, boys or girls or children who are not healthy, forget about their mother? And I think we need to normalize period as I was saying, as like food. And I started doing it in my house because I have two daughters, and I'll ask my husband, my daughters to ask their fathers about pads, saying, "Hey, Papa, I'm in the shower. Can you give me my pad? Hey, Papa, you are going downstairs? Can you bring pads?" So started normalizing conversations with fathers, brothers, so that they know something like this is very acceptable. Girls will go through this, and also they have a role to play in keeping their daughters healthy. So this is what. So, but Meeta would you like to share some incidents from the field?
Yes,
Yes.
brilliant, Kanta. Thank you so much for that. And this is such a sweet and lovely way. And, I've tried that as well in my life too, about in a very normalized, colloquial, conversational way, asking a friend to pick it up. Are you mad? I'm going to pick it up. I said, no, no, don't worry, you just ask. And this entire thing about chemists wrapping it up as if it's the national treasury of sorts, putting it in like five newspapers and then putting it into a bag. It is like I am ashamed to be carrying this packet home, or like what? So it's not there are so many small things which are there. So we will go on to Dr. Meeta before I announce the call to action for the closure of our session. Yes,
Yeah,
Dr.
I'll
Meeta.
quickly go back to some of the stereotypes which I have faced as a medical doctor. So while sex selection is a big issue, and mothers of daughters have to face a lot of ostracism, a lot of indignity, but in cases of infertility also, the men are so defensive. They are so um, nervous and so edgy about getting a simple semen test done, because they believe that if a couple is not having a baby, the problem is with the woman and never with the man. So this very misplaced notion of manhood, of being the procreator, cannot be challenged in cases of most Indian men, because they are so defensive about it. That is one of the things. Another stereotype which I've seen in villages especially is that a man is not supposed to pick up his children in his lap in front of the elders. So here again, you see the toxic male is being encouraged to appear macho, to appear strong, to be not appear emotional, or not appear caring and compassionate towards his own babies. It is so misplaced. So those are the stereotypes that we are seeing even today. It's changing now, fortunately. And in my family, it changed because we are four sisters and one brother, and he would get us our sanitary napkins from the chemist. Of course, he always wanted a rupee for his services, which I gladly gave him. But it started off like that, normalizing. We have a daughter who is very close to her father and talks about her periods and about the dysmenorrhea, the discomfort that she faces. But we are also very privileged, and we've had the advantage of a relatively open dialogue in the family. But that is not all of India. That is not all of Rajasthan, where I work. We still have a long way to go. And as Kanta said, I would like to reiterate that we need to continue to advocate better menstrual health management as part of policy, as part of grassroots level movement and community mobilization towards being more sensitive and caring in the aspect of menstruation of young girls, especially with their brothers and fathers, because therein lies the change. Even today, it is the men who initiate, and they are the ones who use their thoughts and their diktats through the women. So it's not really the woman who's wanting that grandchild, it's the man. If the men were to say there is no question of any sex selection, and whatever gender of the baby that comes into our family will be welcome, then I'm very sure that none of the women, none of the grandmothers would say, oh, I want to see the face of a grandson. Every child who comes into the family will be welcomed in the same way, and it will be a festival of humanity, not of genders.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Dr. Meeta, just two more points I want you to address before I discuss the call to action. Two major myths One, that the gender of the child is based on the woman, which is a complete myth. Of you
Absolutely.
gave birth to a girl, how could you give birth to a girl? That
Precisely.
that part. And two, about the sterility, that where we call words like banj for a woman who cannot reproduce. I would like you to touch upon these two from the medical perspective and scientific
Absolutely.
perspective.
So now the word that we are using is nisantanta. It's not barren. It's not banj. Nisantanta. Kis santan nahi hai. Because you have to find a word, but this seems to fit in and it seems the most dignified as of now. The second point that you mentioned about a woman having only babies, I mean, only baby girls. Our argument is, does she bring them as part of her dowry? It is the seed that is planted into the womb, which comes from the male, which decides whether it is going to be a boy or a girl. So you cannot keep blaming the woman if she has a baby all the time. I mean, there has to be nobody to be blamed. It is part of natural procreation, and we have to bow before nature. And that's how nature works. Now, this is
More
the
so ever, sorry, not more so ever of blame, but the scientific responsibility, that, as you said, it is the chromosome of the male that is responsible to decide
absolutely, it
the
is the
gender of the
sperm.
child, whereas the female goes with the same chromosome, and she
Yes,
has no choice internally, actually, at not externally nor internally, to decide the gender of the child that she is going to give birth
natural
to.
procreation and natural selection. You cannot be play God. Unfortunately, now with a lot of scientific advances, there are certain procedures where they centrifuge the semen and then they pick out the male sperms, that is the XY sperms, and use them to the Y sperms and mate them with the ovum and ensure that a male baby is born. But those are very sophisticated technologies, very expensive, and not accessible to everybody, to the large majority. So those are things that are happening. But at the same time, if we can change the mindsets, we can change the way society looks at daughters and wives, mothers and sisters. That is where we really need to work on mindset change.
Thank
I
you.
really want to address that issue which was put up, saying that COVID vaccination has led to menstrual irregularities in women. Now, what happens is that sometimes um, if a woman is emotionally charged or if she undergoes certain shocking experiences, it is possible that the period get delayed or they tend to become heavier. Or if she's traveling, there are minor hormonal changes, but they settle down. So it is not fair to blame um, the COVID vaccination for menstrual irregularities that will sustain. However, we still need to wait for another 5 or 6 years to really know what the side effects, long-term side effects of COVID vaccines are. It is too early to say that they could be the cause.
Thank
We
you.
really need to understand it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meeda. This was extremely important, and I am thanking all and each of our panelists who are here. I would go on to the closure with the call to action. Now, why this call to action? Just a little brief, that there are so many such discussions and things take place, but with our esteemed panel out here, I am extremely grateful and thankful for them to agree to be a part of the call to action that emerges out of this discussion, so that it does not just remain this 1.5 hour of discussion and talking and rattling ourselves, but actually goes into action, which is also a part of one of our partners and whose family I'm a part of, which is the Rex Karmaveer. I'm also the Rex Karmaveer Jyoti Puruskar awardee 2019. And for me, Rex stands for ideas to action. And for me, everything has been about that. I would not touch it until I can create action out of something, because walking the talk is extremely important. And thus, we share this call to action as a collective force of thoughts from all my esteemed panelists, and on behalf of our founder, Tahira Amir, as well, of the Golden Door Awards, I share this with one and all. First call to action that we want to create is creating awareness on eradicating the stigmas and taboos associated with menstruation and other women issues through programs in schools and extend them to other platforms in cities and rural areas. Two, to create a consortium of supporters that will generate ideas and sponsorships to advocate the increasing access of quality menstrual products for girls and women in the marginalized societies and rural areas. UN Women and any other NGOs, Safe City, Red Dot Foundation of Elsa Marie de Silva, who was with us, and others who could join in onto the bandwagon to do good, is going to come in force for this part. Third, that I would request each of our panelists and our founder, Tahira, to acknowledge and endorse this CTA as a part of the Golden Door Awards panel outcome from Tyranny of Taboos, how extremism of menstrual taboos and stigmas are affecting the world as whole, as humanity as whole, and all of us and each of us. I would like just one word of confirmation that I stand by, I am committed towards this call of action. We have some who have left, but the ones who are there with us, I would ask them to unmute and give their verbal commitment on this panel as we close this session. We would begin with Tahira Amir, our visionary founder of the Golden Door Awards, for whom this is not just an event, but this is the passion of life, to uplift humanity by supporting through the Golden Door truth and integrity, which is committed to be a safe space for these truth writers across the world to come together and support each other and birth new concepts, solutions, and ideas. And even progressive movements like this, what we are calling to action, emerging out of the golden doors, which opens many, many new doors for all of humanity. Tahira Ahmed.
I'm just going to make that one statement. I and Golden Door stand committed to make this reality of human alignment. It really is about human alignment, a reality. And with the human alignment, we get human elevation. And we can move forward to solve more important things, actually, bigger things, because this was not meant to be dragging on for decades and decades and decades. It needs to be closed off now. So I come together as we to commit to resolve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tahira. I would like to go on to Jerome to give his commitment.
Absolutely. I am absolutely committed to this issue, raising awareness, and making sure that we work together effectively to solve the bigger problems in the world, and not allow ourselves to be brought down to this level of fear and ignorance that has stopped so many amazing people from being successful. So I stand here right now 100% committed to this issue and working together to make the change.
Thank you so much, Jerome. I'll ask Najat to give her a few words of commitment.
Thank you, Roshin, and thank you, everybody. And I want to assure you that I'm committed, and it's my passion.
Okay, we have a little freeze frame from Najat. Okay, I'll ask Dr. Meeta to continue and then we'll have Najat back.
I fully and wholeheartedly commit to working tirelessly at the policy level and the community level towards establishing the dignity of girls and women and being the voice of the voiceless, to ensure that we are truly and liberated and evolved humanity, a humanity that respects every species alive. I am willing to put in my health, wealth, and passion into this cause, which is a mission for my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Meeta. Thank you so much. Yes, Najat, we have you back. You can complete what you were saying. You'll need to unmute. Najat, please unmute your mic.
Sorry about that. My connection is starting disturbed. So I want to assure you that I am committed, and I will be. I always, one thing is very important. Working together is the most important. Our voices can be heard more clearly and loudly. So I commit to this, and it's my passion. It's a passion to see a just word for all, a just word for every girl, every woman, every boy, every man. Like, we have to be treated equally. We don't have to, that there should not be disintegration because of because of gender. We are all human beings, and we have to be treated equally. And I stand by this. I commit.
Thank you so much, Najat. And with that, I would like to thank the Golden Door Awards platform, all our team members, our partners, our founder, our co colleagues, our co authors, co winners, and the wonderful winners that were announced yesterday, who have emerged as champions of truth to spread that word of truth and integrity into the world through all that they think, speak, do, and write, especially. So, thank you so much for being there. Thank you, Tahira, for this platform. I thank all of you panelists for your valuable time, especially Jerome, to be there with us almost at 4 a.m. his time, and in a suit, boot, and the brilliant star brooch on his suit. Thank you so much, Jerome. That was so enthusiastic, encouraging to see you show up. And the important part of life for all of us is how we show up. And when we need to stand up for ourselves, stand up for the society, and as Dr. Meeta said, be the voice of the voiceless. May each one of us, as Golden Door Awards ambassadors and winners, be that voice to the voiceless of truth and integrity, to be spreading our love and light into the world. With that, a very, very big namaste to each one of you, which means the consciousness within me bows down to the consciousness within you. The potential within me bows down to the potential within you. The God within me bows down to the God within you. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, afternoon, morning, daytime, whatever at your end. Good night. Signing off. Thank you. Thanks, Tahira.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye, Roshni. That was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It's been an honor. I really appreciate it.
Indeed, an honor for me too. Thank you very much, all panelists and Roshni, for bringing us together.
Thank you. Thank you to
so
all
much.
of you.
Thank you very much.
This was
Wonderful.
brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Meeta.
You got
We'll
the
stay in touch on our WhatsApp group for
Thank you,
more
Tyra.
discussions.
Thank you. We'll get in touch also, huh? Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.